Welcome, everybody. We are here for episode 10 of Daily Writing with me, Devin Galaudet. Today, we are going to dive into 8 big tips to help get your queries read and doing sort of like a best practices overview, introduction to writing query letters, because writing is a tough business. It's very competitive. Your story needs to be seen, so we want to give it every opportunity to take away the challenges and things like that the mistakes people make. This comes from my years of experience as editor-in-chief of In the Know Traveler. Plus, I have sent out my fair share of queries writing for magazines, and my book, 10,000 Miles with My Dead Father's Ashes, is going to be out September 18th later this year. So I hope you're going to stick with us. We have a whole bunch of stuff to cover. And so really important, turn up the volume if you are at work trying to wait for some sort of a captions thing. I'm going to turn them on. I think when I get these things on YouTube, which I've just started doing, hopefully that will be helpful for those of you who need to read and do it quietly at work. But that's what we've got going on. So this is going to be, and I put in little index cards to spice things up. If you notice, I'm also wearing stripes rather than my usual plaid. So we are going to do an introduction into queries. This is how you're going to get in touch with writers and editors, and it's kind of a continuation of sort of my thoughts on working with an editor in general from yesterday. And there's lots to think about here, and these are some of the biggest things that have helped me. So I want to not only have they helped me, these are sort of the challenges I've come up against as somebody who has sent me. I've received, over the last 13, 14 years, I have received thousands of query letters, and I have to be honest with you. A bad query letter is like, I'm out quickly, and it's not personal. I just have quick choices to make. Like, I wake up in the morning and I'm like you, I probably get 300 or 400 emails, no joke, every single day. So if I miss 100 of the 300 every single day, like I don't go through them, by the end of the week, I have 700 extra emails. So it's a total drag. So I have to I look, I go, it's either right, it's moving in the right direction, or it's wrong. If it's moving in the right direction, I will keep reading. If not, then I won't. And, as an example for my book, my query letter for my book went through a number of iterations before I finally settled on something that I felt really confident that I was sending out the right thing. So anyway, here is the number one tip along this line is read the publication. Reading the publication is really important. When I say read the publication, I'm saying, as an example, if you were to send a travel query to In the Know Traveler, if you have not read the publication, it will become abundantly clear to me in 2 seconds. And the second I'm aware of that is probably the second that I am turned off. The second I realize you probably haven't even been to the website and you've just called my name off of some sort of a list or something like that, then it's kind of a waste of my time, because every time I have to explain what the site is and what my expectations are of a writer means that I'm not doing other work. So I've tried to set things up on my website to help people along with that. So if you don't read the site, like what's happening on the site, the kind of articles that we publish, then you are doing your editor a disservice. What you don't want to do is require that every editor respond with the same series of questions, because really you or another writer is not prepared to move forward. So really important to read the articles on the site. Now, if we're talking about a book, that's not quite the same thing. We're going to get to that in a second, but really important, you should see what kind of authors an imprint or a publisher or an agent, for that matter, a literary agent, what kind of authors are they working with? What are they accomplishing? And then you have to decide whether or not you genuinely fit into the category of that publication, of that literary agent, of the website that you hope to be a part of in the near future. So that said, what you want to do is make sure that you are finding out what books sold, and perhaps even read these. Like, definitely, if this is a website and it's an article, make sure that you read a few articles. It'll take you 15 minutes and will give you tons of information about what goes on to the site, what kind of articles they're publishing, because there's no sense in wasting your time. And if you are thinking about a small press like me, you want to kind of have a sense of what kind of books they are in fact publishing. So all you have to do is look up at the titles of the kinds of works that they're publishing, so you can have a chance. I suggest you can read a book, but if you don't want to, you don't have time, at least read the summaries that are on the book on the publisher's site, which is something that I did do. So when I sent them a query letter, at least I had a reasonable expectation that even if it wasn't a perfect fit, that I was in the ballpark of the kinds of books that this publisher is willing to sell and promote. Because even if they say yes to a book that they're not really normally accustomed to, you have to have a basic understanding that they're willing to promote your book. Really important stuff. Okay, so after that, once you have a sense like, okay, I could write for this publisher or this editor, this website, this publishing company, this literary agent, etc., then what you want to do, really important, is check out the submission guidelines. These are crucial. I have spent, over the last 13 years, I think probably once a year, I go through the submission guidelines and I make little tweaks and little changes. Most of my submission guidelines on In the Know Traveler are pretty straightforward, but you'd be amazed. In other words, for a long time, I would write, we publish articles that are from 500 to 700 words. If your article is like 1,000 words longer than that, then I'm not even going to respond. Like, I want to know that you've bothered to read the submission guidelines. Everybody has a set of rules. Like, as an example, when I was sending out my book and my book proposal, they would tell you, and each one would be different. In other words, one person would say, we want a one-page query. The next person would say, we want a one-page query with a synopsis between 3 and 5 pages. Someone might say, we want a one-page query letter and include the first 20 pages of your book. And again, it's going to be completely different. Not completely different. I mean, basically, what they're going to want to know is, why are you submitting something to them? And they're going to want to see it in a format that they want to see it in, because that's going to help them get information as quickly as possible as to whether or not they want to pursue a conversation with you. And because, as I've already said, time is of the essence, you want to be clear and get this stuff done quickly for them. Okay. So let's say you have all the right places, you've got the right story, you've got the right publisher. Now what? What I highly recommend to do is, if you can find and get an introduction, this is, by the way, tip number 3, if you can get an introduction to somebody. As an example, my publisher ultimately came from sort of like a friend to write them. And did I drop their name? Totally I did. I did in the query letter. So that means that I'm kind of already coming pre-approved to some degree. So as an example, I know other magazine editors and publishers, and if I refer them a writer, then those people can kind of feel confident or more confident. Then it's not just like a slush pile kind of thing. So if you can get an introduction, then do so. Nepotism is big points. And moreover, even if it's not a huge direct thing, what is a great thing to do is try to find somebody, like you have a common friend in LinkedIn or Facebook, because that is a useful tool as well. If you can get an introduction, I would do it. Tip number 4, you want the editor's name, especially, and by the way, like if you want to write for a publication, the editor's name and their team's name is in the masthead. That's like in the first few pages, and it basically gives you a list of who's the editor-in-chief, who's the associate editor, who are the people that are, and if you're looking for a name, you might want to look in the acknowledgement section of any sort of novel, memoir. Most books will have some sort of an acknowledgement to say, who's the team of people that helped this book come to an existence. And like, I'm absolutely thanking the wonderful team at Rare Bird who are helping me. So that's a great place to start. So not only do you want to get the name of the editor, you want to make sure you spell that editor's name correctly. I get all kinds of weird spellings of my last name, and if it's just weird and it shows me that you just didn't care, then I probably don't care. Unless there's some extenuating circumstance why your article or story is so special that I'm willing to overlook that. It's just one of those things that kind of leaves a bad taste in somebody's mouth. You don't want to do it, especially, and you don't want to get a letter from somebody saying, you didn't even care to spell my name correctly. That's a total dud. Okay, so tip number 5, send out one email at a time. This is important because what I have seen happen lots, like a surprising amount of times, is that I will get a query from somebody and it'll be something like, "Dear Sir," which is silly because if I was a woman, that you would just shoot yourself in the foot, or "Dear Editor," and then you see in the email box, it's like 59 different editors. So do I care? At that point, do I think you've put much care and consideration? Because I put a lot of care and consideration into my website. Publishers and editors alike put a lot of care and consideration to the books that they publish. So that means if you are not meeting their standards of care, then you can assume that they are just going to move on rather quickly. A matter of fact, once I see there's like a whole slew of other names that are in the editor or the to box on an email, I just delete it. Again, it goes back to, I'm sure they wrote a great article, but you're competing with way too many people. So keep that in mind anytime you're sending something out. All right, so now in the body of the email, you want to get straight to the point. I am not looking for all kinds of justifications. I mean, if you say, "Hey, I've been to your site, I love this article, I think I've got a match here," that's enough. One good sentence or 2 sentences is plenty, but then you want to get to, what are you presenting to me? Is it a book? Is it a novel? Is it a memoir? Is it a travelogue? Is it a 500-word article? Is it a 72,000-word memoir? Get to the point, and then really, if it is an article, you just may want to cut and paste the article right into the body of the email. A lot of people do not accept attachments. I do, but a lot of people don't because of virus scares and weird things like that. So again, this goes back to, what are the submission guidelines? If they say don't send attachments because it's to your convenience. Do what they want, because again, they're looking for any reason to say no, because there is a million other people that are also sending submissions. So just be mindful of that editors are people too. We're busy, we're trying, we're doing the best that we can, and it gets really complicated really quick. Okay, so in the same body of the letter, demonstrate that you have put forth some effort in choosing it. And I kind of mentioned this a couple of tips ago. So as an example, if somebody says, "I visited your website, I'm an avid reader, and I want to be a part of your site," that sounds fine, but usually to me that's kind of like a generic 2 or 3 line introduction that probably means that they haven't been to the submission guidelines, they haven't done anything. People who kind of end up in my site actually say, "Oh, I finished reading this article about Albania and I really loved it. My trip to Albania was this. I think you need more articles on Albania." When stuff like that happens, I actually perk up, like, "Oh, okay, you've done a little bit of due diligence in being interested in what it is that I'm hoping to accomplish with my own site." And so again, this goes back to care. Does this mean that you can send out 80 submissions or 80 query letters at one time? It means no. It means that you should put in a little bit of effort and carefully pick and choose people, because in the long run, it will open the doors for you to create relationships with editors and agents and people who can truly make an enormous difference in your life. But part of that needs to be earned. So if you're writing generic letters, because matter of fact, what's funny, especially in content marketing, people are always wanting something for nothing. So they have the standard phrase. It's so standard that it is true, like from 1,000 people. I get these same exact letters, word for word, with the same thing, sometimes like all of them with my name misspelled. And it's like, you just don't want to go, you don't want to be lumped into that. Because if I see your name a second time and I recognize it as somebody who just is wasting my time, I'm deleting it without even looking at your email. So do a little bit of work. Like, we're not talking hours of work. We're talking 30, 40 seconds worth of work. Do a few minutes worth of work. So when you're submitting your articles to the right place, the right person getting them will see that and appreciate it. Finally, once you sent out your email, in the submission guidelines, it'll probably tell you if they're going to get back to you, how they're going to get back to you, and what getting back to you actually looks like. So what that means is, you don't want to just call them up. I've had that happen a number of times. Again, it goes back to just a time thing. And I'm sure there are people saying, well, no, you should go ahead and pester them. Actually, most people don't want to be pestered. If you are not a match and they say they're probably not going to get back to you, there's probably no reason to. For the most part, a lot of editors, such as myself, have autoresponders. And if you got an autoresponder of like, this happened, here's one of the 3 things that you probably sent me, I'll get back to you in X amount of time if it's a match. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee you we're going to send you no's, and we're not going to. This is also true. If you want, let's say you get a rejection, and it's probably some sort of a generic thing, and again, it falls into the it's not personal category. If you get a rejection, nobody's going to have time to write you a detailed response so your writing can be improved. That's just not the case. If you want your writing to be improved, come here every week, write your questions down in that little box there, talk to us, in formats like this on Twitter or on Facebook, where we can take the time and it's all in one place and I can respond to questions easily, then I'm happy to help. But if it's like, I want you to give me this kind of thing, you've just rejected my story and now I expect you to give me some sort of a detailed litany as to why, is really not a practical thing for anybody. So anyway, I think that's what we've got today. Again, you can always find me at devingallaudet.com, which I will include. I'm sort of like a mirror reflection of you, so I have to use the wrong hand to point at the right box. So use the box here, leave a comment. I'm going to respond to everything, ask a question. I will answer that question in the box on Facebook or on YouTube or on devingallaudet.com. We're going to be putting these videos everywhere. This was our 10th. Leave comments, and if you have sort of like a specifically a literature kind of question or writing question, put it down. And if I can, I will use it as an upcoming podcast. We do this every single day. I hope you will enjoy it, and I hope this has been useful to you. And we're going to be doing this again tomorrow, just to talk about writing and life and how to get better at writing and getting published more and doing your thing. So that's it. Leave your questions and comments down here, and I'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thanks so much for hanging around with us today.